Hello.
Hello,
How's
everyone.
it going?
Hi, Madison. Things are going well.
Yeah,
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. What is new?
Well, I had one of the most terrifying experiences in my life the other week.
Oh, but things are going great, right?
I mean, things are fine. So I brought you into this debacle when it happened.
What do you mean?
Basically,
Get me out of there.
So when I was drying my sheets, I opened the dryer to find little bugs.
Oh.
And initially, I thought they were bed bugs.
Oh, fuck.
Which would have destroyed my entire life.
You'd have to burn everything down.
Yeah. But then I looked up bed bugs. They weren't bed bugs. They looked more like fleas.
Okay.
So the next day at work, I was like, Madison, I don't know if Bowie and Binks have fleas, but somehow Janie got fleas.
I've got to say, I was trying to not take offense. But it's really hard when somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I think I found fleas, and you're the last person with an animal that I interacted with.
Yeah. But then, I was looking at a picture, because I took a picture of little fuckers. After I thoroughly toasted them. I said to my dad, I was like, hey, Dad, what do these look like to you? And he gave me a few options, and I was like, that doesn't really look like them. And he was like, well, you did toast them. And I was like, you're right.
You did toast them.
And then I realized that they actually weren't from Janie or anyone else. They were actually spider beetles within the wall of the dryer.
What the hell are spider beetles?
They look like little flea-shaped beetles with long legs, and they eat lint.
Ew, okay.
I don't know how they got into my dryer, but I sure as hell know how they got out. They got out. I pretty much, I don't know what you would call it exactly.
Obliterated,
incinerated.
It's a good one.
I haven't seen them since, but
sent them to the fiery depths of hell.
Yeah. But for, I would say that entire evening, I was absolutely mortified that either bed bugs or fleas were in my bed.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
And
how do you sleep? You don't.
I didn't. My neighbor was subjected to loud vacuuming at like 11:30 at night.
Oh no.
But then I later learned that they were spider beetles, and there was really nothing to worry about.
So was your dad the one who diagnosed them?
Initially, yes.
Okay.
I sent a picture to him, and I was like, what does this look like to you? And he said, looks like, what was it exactly? Some other kind of beetle.
Okay.
It wasn't a spider beetle, but it was like some kind of dappled beetle. And I was like, how did a dappled beetle get into my dryer? Let alone into my sheets?
Shaking your dad. How did they get in there?
Did you put them
Did you put them there?
You seem awfully in the know about these beetles and how they somehow arrived in my
You're naming them?
apartment. But I mean, they tasted nothing like beetles. But you would be surprised the diversity of flavors in the animal kingdom.
Oh, okay.
But
I bet
that was squared away. The next day I came into work and I sent you a message. I was like, hey, I got to talk to you. It's not an emergency. And then
it was an emergency.
It was. You gave me a lot of good advice on how to get rid of fleas, which I appreciate.
I'm an expert at getting rid of fleas.
Which is strange because just a moment ago you were taking offense at the idea that your animals would have fleas.
I was. But see, the thing is, as the good things that they are doing in shelters, it is very hard to keep them clean if like fleas get involved. Like once they're in there, it's really hard to get them out. So back home in Johnstown, the Humane Society where we would adopt our cats from were always infested with fleas. So if we adopted a cat, we'd have to bring it home and treat it, and so I became very good at learning how to treat fleas from doing the good work that nobody else would do and adopting these poor little creatures.
Yeah.
And I'd give them a little bath. Actually, I tried to give my cats a bath recently. I have a huge scratch on my chest, actually, from it. I've been trying to kind of purposely wear higher collared things just to cover it up. It's not great. I look like I was in like a slasher movie, and like how
that bad?
Like you get like defensive like wounds.
Yeah.
And you're like no, and then like cuts your chest or something. Yeah, Binks fucked me up. Bowie poor little guy. He was a perfect little angel. He was scared, but I got to bathe him. So like 5 minutes in and out. Binks, not so much.
Yeah. That was one of the things that I was worried about when I thought it was fleas, that I would have to bathe Janie.
Yeah.
And there's no happy ending to that story.
No.
For her or for me.
See, usually what I do is I wear a hoodie so that I can like tighten it up so that I can't be scratched.
Yeah.
But because it went so well with Bowie, I took the risk. And also not that they needed to be bathed. They just had like some dandruff, and I was like, oh. Yeah. Just give them a little scrub-a-dub-dub. Because I actually, the day that you had told me, I had immediately ordered cat shampoo.
Smart.
To kill the potential fleas that I'd have to get rid of from my boys. And then Dylan said like 20 minutes later, hey, guess what? They're not fleas. I was like, okay, guess what? Great.
They are toasted spider beetles.
Cool. Awesome. But then I still had this cat shampoo. And I was like, might as well use it.
Yeah.
So
We knew spider beetles were a fucking thing.
I didn't know that was a thing. You said spider beetles, and I was like, excuse me?
Yeah, where did they come from?
I don't know. The spiders? Are they...
The spiders are mutating in the beetles.
They might be. I don't know.
Oh, goodness gracious. But that was a hell of a ride.
Yeah, that was
much.
I was in go mode, though. When you told me, I was like... Whoosh, whoosh.
Yeah, you provide a lot of great advice, none of which I had to actually take. So,
well, if you ever do,
thank you very much.
It's right there for you.
Yeah, what's new in your life, huh?
Nothing crazy. We didn't talk about this. I went on a ghost hunt in Gettysburg.
Yes.
Listen, guys, I know this is going to sound crazy, and I need to preface that because there was some activity, and as someone who is, I think you should be very skeptical. I am very skeptical myself. I didn't even truly believe before this. And honestly, I still don't know if I do. But something happened. And I did not do that something that had happened. I don't have an explanation for it. So that's it. But
what happened?
So we were on this ghost hunt, and they were telling us the history of Gettysburg. And like we got to walk, oddly enough, the Gettysburg High School football field was part of the battlefield, part of like some of the bloodiest areas of the battlefield.
I mean, where do the most epic battles take place? And on the football field?
Beer.
Bear! Sorry, I'm getting over his sickness.
Stop spreading it! My gosh!
I'm not contagious anymore. Just let me do the air horn. Bear.
A squeaky car horn.
I'm bouncing back. But you were saying.
But there's a ton of dead bodies buried underneath that football field. So we went like around that area, and she had like a bunch of things. She had like an obelisk and like
obelisk.
It's like a spirit box.
Oh, I see.
Essentially. And what the spirit box does is it kind of like flips through radio channels quickly, and then it'll like hopefully say something. But we didn't use that. She said that usually people just have fun playing with the dowsing rods, and I have to say I agree, and I would very much like them myself. So I had the dowsing rods, and if you don't know what they are these two copper rods that kind of like an L shape, and you hold the short end of the L's, but when you hold them, they can still like swivel and move freely on their own. I'm not a mechanic. I don't know how this shit works.
Just a mechanic getting under the hood of the rods.
Yeah, exactly. Oh. So you hold them out in front of you, and if they cross inward like an X, that means yes. And if they if they open up, that means no. People asked, how do the ghosts know that? Well, you tell them that. That's just the kind of common, and I'm sure they're used to it after many people are doing that in and out thing. So I was roaming around, and the tour guide was like, hey, like there's like some people around here, try over there by the fence. And I tried by the fence, and there was nobody there. So I went up to a tree, and I was standing there, and nothing was happening. And I asked a question. I felt really silly, and the tour guide came over and said, this is gonna make me look like a loon, but sometimes they just need to be introduced to you. So she said, hi, my name is whatever. This is my friend Madison. She would like to speak with you if you're open to it. Is there anybody there who would like to communicate? And don't you fucking know it, these dowsing rods started to cross inward. And it wasn't like, they're not sharp movements. It was like slow, like you can see it like trying, like twitching almost to like come inside. I was not doing that. They were not moving before.
Right.
I was white knuckling those dowsing rods, and like my arms were strapped to the side of my body, so they were not moving. There was no wind. There was nothing manipulating them, except for whatever this was. So I had a full conversation over probably like an hour with this ghost.
You asked it its name. It said yes.
Almost. I asked if it was a boy or a girl, and then I stopped, and I was like, you can't answer that. So I asked if it was a boy. It said yes. I asked if it was from the South. He said yes. So he was a Confederate soldier. I asked if he was from Louisiana, because that's where a lot of those Confederate soldiers were from, and he said no. They whipped out. I asked if he had a wife. He was a little hesitant, or either he was hesitant or he was having trouble. And I said, you don't have to like her. I was just curious. And they crossed inwards. He had kids. And then the craziest thing, probably the craziest question that I asked what his estimated age was, because I was just curious. So I asked if he was in his 20s. And to help him out, I started counting in the 20s. Like 21, 22, 23. And it went outwards.
Yeah.
It was going outwards. So I said, okay. Well, then how about 30s? And I started counting the 30s too. And I could see it like twitching inwards. And it was having either a hard time or just like hesitating. I don't know how this stuff works. I'm not an expert. But whenever
You're not a mechanic.
What?
You're not a mechanic.
I'm not a mechanic, guys. Yeah. Okay? I don't know how dowsing rods work.
You're a doctor. You're
I'm
not a mechanic.
Doctor. I'm a doctor of science.
Yes.
That's how you know that this is true. So they're like twitching inwards when I'm counting like in the early 30s, and then they kind of like stop whenever I count a little bit higher. And so then I started thinking, maybe I could find like a more exact like age this way. So I started counting 30, 31, 32, very slow, but like within that range. And whenever I would count 30, 31, 32, they'd start moving again. And whenever I'd get past 33 and 34, it stopped moving as I got farther away from it. So I would imagine that this Confederate soldier was in his early 30s.
Incredible.
It really was. It was insane. And then David came over.
Yeah.
Because David wasn't getting anything to happen. And although he said he knew how it worked, he wasn't actually trying. So the tour guy was like, hey, like, just ask a question and just have David watch so that he can see it moving, at least so that he can have some experience.
Yeah.
And so The
best question to ask is, how do these work?
How do these work?
Yes.
I'm like, yes. I was like, I don't know. They go out. So David saw that it was moving, or at least I was seeing that it was moving. I don't know if David believed that or not, that I wasn't manipulating that. And that's the other thing too. At one point, David said something that made me laugh, and I like chuckled. And because I had the dowsing rods like I had my arms tucked into my sides to like grip myself essentially so I could hold it still.
Sure.
Whenever I chuckled, obviously my body moved up and down, and it like whipped them out quickly. So like obviously if I were moving it, it would be more fast.
Right.
But this was like very slow. Like I wasn't doing that.
I believe you.
And then she said, well, David, like maybe you can ask a question and Madison will hold them, but like you can be the one directing the question. So David fucking asks, did you enjoy your time in the war? And I looked at David. I'm like, what? He fucking died. What do you mean?
You enjoy your time in the war.
Oh,
yeah.
That was a no, in case anybody was curious.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Well, he's on the losing side.
It's true.
Yeah.
And then after David left, I was like, you know what? Let me just ask. And I said, did you like David? And I said, no. And then I asked, okay, I was like, one more question. Did you like me? Did you like talking to me? And it was hesitant at first, but it did say no. And I don't blame him. This guy's probably so just trying to like chill.
Yeah. Well, he hasn't had anyone talk to him in a long time.
Oh, well, that's the thing. He probably does have people to talk to, and they're probably asking the same fucking questions over and over and over again. Probably. Are you a boy? Are you married? Do you have children? He's like, fucking yes. Stop asking me.
Man, you told this story in the office.
I did.
A few weeks ago.
I did.
And I gotta tell you something.
What?
I went home later that day, and I was like, I gotta try this. So I got dowsing rods of my own.
Did you actually?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And I tried it myself.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And?
I sat on my couch and I held the little rods out.
Tucked all in?
Yeah, I tucked. And these things were swanging all over the place because I don't think I got very high quality rods, number one. They were $15 on Amazon.
Probably not the highest of qualities.
No. But I sat there and I tried using them and they seemed to be working.
Yeah?
But they were saying yes to everything.
Well,
so I don't know.
What were you asking?
Just a whole bunch of questions like, are you a spirit guide?
Yes.
Yes. It's like, and I had a really hard time coming up with questions because I don't really have a lot of thoughts.
Literally, she's like start thinking of questions because you're not gonna like. I'm trying to give you like history and information so you don't run out of questions. And I'm like, fuck. Like,
yeah. Is My Existential Crisis the best podcast ever? They said yes.
You heard it here first, folks. I also saw orbs.
You saw an orb and you took a picture of the orb.
I did, and it was like one of those moving pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Or so it has it floating around, and I didn't believe orbs existed. I did not believe that they existed, guys. This is not me being like, oh yeah, look, all these hokey pokey things. No, I did not believe that they existed. I would hear shit about these fucking orbs. People were talking about orbs, and I'm like, that's not real. It's fucking
dust.
Light. It's dust.
It's dust in front of the camera.
It's something else. This was not that.
This was glowing.
It was glowing. It was pitch black. There was nobody else around. It was just us. And it was just like this, like whitish blue light that I had seen in the distance. And I thought, I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
But then I saw it, and I saw it moving around. Mm-hmm. And how I even got pictures of it was a total freak accident because literally we were leaving. We were walking away from it. And I was like, fuck, I meant to go get pictures because that's how they, like, if you take it quickly in succession, at least you can, like, check back with them and, like, see any inconsistencies. So that's what I was doing. I just, like, pointed it to the field. I saw a little bit of a light, and I was like, I'm just going to keep going. And then I kept seeing it move, and I was like, click, 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 click. It was crazy. And yeah, one of the last photos that I had taken, because the object was moving, it took that moving image photo, and you can see it like moving around, and then it disappears. It's not a firefly. I promise you guys, they're not even in season yet, and they're going extinct. And
they taste bad.
Then yeah, actually.
You should add that to the Instagram.
I will, because it was insane.
And it's interesting that this happens around the same time that an increase in UAP sightings and orbs specifically have been noted across the United States.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
I will say that was like the first thing that Dylan said he was trying to tie it into aliens. Not that I don't believe in aliens. I just thought it was funny.
Do you believe in aliens?
I do. I don't believe in them in like little green men, but I think I go back and forth because like the probability of us being alone in the universe is so unlikely, yet it also is very likely because the conditions have to be perfect. But then we're also just thinking in terms of what we know and what is life in terms of what we know.
Exactly right. And it must be so sad to be an alien because nobody believes in you.
We're technically aliens. People don't believe in us.
I had this conversation the other day with somebody.
Really?
I don't remember who. But they said that we're aliens. I said, that's not true. We're not aliens. Because aliens are a label that we give to something outside of the Earth that exists extraterrestrial.
But we could be extraterrestrial to somebody else.
But would they have a term or concept for an alien that we could apply?
Probably.
I guess.
If they're sentient in that way and they can like think cognitively like that. There might be somebody looking up at their own moon right now thinking, what else is out there? Think about that.
Okay. Now what?
That's all I've got. That's as far as I've got.
Welcome, folks, to My Existential Crisis.
The podcast where we talk about every single damn thing that makes us question our entire sense of self. My name is Madison Epley.
And my name is Dylan Berger.
Dylan.
Yes.
I have got...
Big sigh.
I've got a lot for you today.
Yeah, you showed me earlier. It's like a 30-page script.
I have 30 pages of notes. This will be at least two-parter.
You wrote a novella.
I did.
A booklet.
I did. There was just so much to cover. And it felt... the problem that I have with these stories is I want to tell every single detail.
Yes.
And not because I want to be obnoxious, but because I think every little detail deserves to be told, for one. And I think every little detail matters. So it's really hard for me to pick and choose.
Yeah, it's good to preface it by saying, I don't want to be obnoxious.
I really don't. I do not. Guys, listen, I don't want to be obnoxious. But I think all of these things matter, and I think that they add up in different ways, and I think that it's worth taking a look at. I mean, people do studies about people who do bad things all the time, and I think that it's worth just, like, knowing. And not just knowing to maybe prevent it, but also knowing just to, like, this happens. Yeah. And those people deserve to have their name shared and their stories told.
Absolutely. And at the end of this story, after all those details are given, you, the listener, can guess who the killer is. Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to tell you.
No.
Just kidding. I have to tell you because then you'll figure it out with the sources at the very least.
Sources are
Conversations with the Killer, the John Wayne Gacy tapes, the man who killed... What did you say?
Spoiler.
Yeah. The Man Who Killed Boys, the John Wayne Gacy Jr. story, Buried Dreams, another book on John Wayne Gacy, Wikipedia, Britannica, the Cooks County Sheriff's Department, the FBI, and biography.com.
Sheesh.
And if you haven't figured it out yet, this is one of the parts of the story of John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah, this is going to be
at least two-parter. We'll see how we feel after we're already at 20 minutes. So we'll see.
Okay.
All right. So to start off, we're going to start off with the disappearance and investigation of Robert Piest. Robert Piest was a 15-year-old who worked in Nissan Pharmacy in suburban Illinois. It was December 11th, 1978, and the evening was a particularly cold one. While Rob was restocking shelves, a friend and coworker, Kim, was working the register. With the doors opening and closing as customers walked in and out, it made the front of the store near the registers pretty chilly. Having forgotten her own jacket, Kim asked to borrow Rob's favorite blue parka. It was a pretty slow Monday, so Kim got some film developed and accidentally put the receipt into Rob's jacket pocket, forgetting that she was wearing his coat. Kim would later say that she almost threw this receipt away, but she had an odd feeling that maybe she should keep it. And she did. Sometime in the evening, a large man came in to work a contracting job at the pharmacy and left around 8 p.m. As the contractor was working at the store, Robert overheard the man talking about how he hired teenage boys at his contracting company with the starting wage of $5 per hour, which was nearly double what Robert was currently making at the pharmacy, restocking shelves. It was about 9 o'clock at this point, and the contractor came back in. He had forgotten his appointment book. Robert's mom was there to pick him up. It was her birthday, and they would be celebrating with a special birthday dinner.
Oh.
Trying to catch the contractor before he left again, Robert told his mom he'd be right back. He grabbed his jacket back from Kim and headed outside. 20 minutes later, Mrs. Piest is still waiting around for Rob. He said he'd be right back. So she goes up and asks Kim, hey, where did Robert go?
Mrs. Piest.
So Kim explained that he went out to catch a guy about a summer job contracting. Mrs. Piest decided that she'd go back home. If her son wanted to ask about a job, he'd be home soon. So, I'll come back later. So she got home and there was no word from Robert or from the pharmacy. So she decided to go to the police to get help.
Mm-hmm. To the police.
Right. And Robert was never seen again.
Until the next day.
Nope.
Okay, I see.
Nope.
Gotcha.
Not until many months later. Not in the greatest of conditions.
I see.
The contractor's name was John Wayne Gacy, and he was a respectable man in town with friends in high places. He had an impeccable reputation as a community member in multiple clubs and within a small faction of the Democratic political party. He was immediately named as a person of interest as he was the last one reportedly to have seen him alive. Lieutenant Joseph Kozenchak decided to investigate further. he ran a background check on Gacy, and it turned up that his impeccable reputation wasn't as squeaky clean as everybody thought. His background check revealed a criminal charge of battery in Chicago, where he had been imprisoned in Iowa for the sodomy of a 15-year-old boy.
Yeesh.
Yeah. The lieutenant and 2 other officers visited Gacy's home the following evening to question him, but Gacy was adamant that he had never offered Robert a job or even spoken to him. He told the officers that, you know what, I'm going to come into the station later this evening and I'll make an official statement. Don't worry, but I'm busy right now. Well, Gacy's idea of that evening was 3:20 a.m. the following morning.
Right.
John Wayne Gacy arrived at the station covered in mud, claiming he had been in a car accident. He showed up at 3:20 a.m. to speak to the lieutenant, who had gone home because it was 3 a.m, and he was asked to show up later that day at a more respectable hour.
Right.
John was actually pretty pissed. He said, I'm here. I showed up like I said I was going to, and nobody's here to talk to me.
I got a car accident.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't want to come. He didn't want to come back. But he did. And he again denied ever giving Robert a job or speaking to him at all. He said that the store owner had actually called him to let him know that he left behind his appointment book. And that was not true. And at their request, John Wayne Gacy provided the police with a written statement detailing where he went the day of December 11th. So who was this guy who was suspected? To everybody in his suburban Chicago town, John Wayne Gacy was a respected community member and leader even, but his history might tell a different story. So let's just go back a little bit. I said a little bit, a lot of it. Let's just start with childhood.
Wow, that's a lot of it.
A lot of it. I was going to break it up, but this is also so poignant, and I didn't want to because there's so much, I didn't want to bounce between different timelines. So I figured this is the most storytelling out of order that I'll do.
No, I know a fair bit about John Wayne Gacy and his story as well.
I also, whenever I told Dylan that I was going to do this story, Dylan's like, oh yeah, I know all about John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah.
They were best friends.
Yeah, we go way back.
Yeah, way back. But yeah, I'd always heard of John Wayne Gacy. I've always known some of the things that he had done. I obviously knew the sensationalized clown aspect of things, but I had never actually done the research and looked into who he was or what actually happened. So
yeah,
I was a little shocked that there was so much to find. Not because I didn't know that he did bad things, but I think whenever I think of serial killers, so much we don't know. We don't necessarily know because they're dead. We can look at the forensic evidence, but John Wayne Gacy not only has so many accounts from survivors during that time, but also people who are still coming out to this day talking about the abuse that they suffered. So that's kind of why there's so much. But anyway, back to the story. John Wayne Gacy, he was born in Chicago, Illinois on March 17th, 1942. He was the second of 3 children and the only son of John Stanley Gacy and Marion Elaine Robinson. His father was an auto repair machinist. He was a mechanic. He knew what to do with the dowsing rods.
Yeah, I know that he was also a real masculine man's man.
Was.
And that's why he named his son John Wayne.
Exactly. Yeah. He was very, very, very manly, had very high expectations for his son to be the very same way. And as we will get into, John Wayne Gacy was basically a disappointment in every single sense of the word for his father.
It's one of the biggest disappointments of all time.
I think that's kind of fair to say at this point. So yeah, he was a World War I veteran, and his mother was a homemaker. Gacy was really close to his mom and 2 sisters, but he had a very difficult relationship with his alcoholic father. He was very verbally and physically abusive to his family. John, the father, he frequently belittled his son, calling him dumb and stupid, comparing him unfavorably with his sisters. One of Gacy's earliest childhood memories was of his father beating him at the age of 4 because he accidentally messed up the order of the car engine components. And he got a beating for it. John Wayne Gacy's mother tried to shield her son from the abuse, which resulted in accusations that he was a sissy, a mama's boy, and he would probably grow up to be queer. John's psychosexual history began between the ages of 6 and 10, very early on, when a teenage daughter of one of his mother friends reportedly undressed and played with him.
Yeesh.
In 1949, Gacy's father whipped him after he and another boy were caught sexually abusing a young girl. And the same year, a family friend then began to occasionally molest Gacy. So It was very not great on all fronts. And Gacy had never told his father about this molestation, afraid that his father would blame him for it, which honestly at the time is probably true.
Uh-huh.
Despite their challenging relationship, Gacy did love his father very much, but he constantly felt he was never good enough in his father's eyes, and we will see that. It's pretty prevalent in his life. Gacy was overweight, he was unathletic, he was sickly, bringing even more shame to his father, who wanted a strong, masculine boy to live up to the name that he was given, not just John Wayne, but also his own name. He's John Wayne Gacy Jr. Because of a heart condition, he was told to avoid sports. So not only was he sickly, but he also couldn't participate in quote-unquote normal boy activities to bond with the other kids. He had to stay away from it.
It's just all of these factors coming together.
Yeah.
The molestations from the people around him and the sickliness.
Yeah.
Distancing him from people his age.
Mm-hmm.
It feels very much like a nurture over nature kind of serial killer.
Yeah, very much. That is very much how I feel about it, at the very least. There are also reports that he had hit his head on a swing set as a child.
Brain damage.
Which is, part of the serial killer trifecta type of thing.
Yeah.
What people typically sense. I couldn't find exactly when that would have happened. And also, I know that it can be a common thing, but also so many fucking kids hit their heads.
Yeah.
I think it's really unfair to say that that's a serial killer trope.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I was hit in the head with the handle of a shovel very hard.
Yeah.
And honestly, I is smarter for it.
Yeah. Whenever I was a kid, somebody hit me in the face with a baseball bat.
Jesus.
It was one of my cousins. He swung, and
you don't look anything like a baseball.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, I was coming up behind him, not paying attention, and he swung and cracked my jaw.
Jesus.
Yeah. So see, I think the whole trope, that's a story for another day, but
yeah,
that's why I didn't feel it was important to bring up. But yeah.
Is there anything wrong with your jaw? No?
Yeah, nothing's wrong with my jaw. Yeah, Dylan's examining me. He's looking sideways. What's wrong?
The listeners don't know this, but I have a huge dent in the middle of my forehead.
What?
From where that shovel hit me.
Are you serious?
It's a shovel-shaped dent right in the middle of right between the eyes. Of course I'm not being serious.
I was gonna say, I can kind of see something. Oh, okay. Well, in the 4th grade, continuing on with how sickly Gacy was, he began to experience blackouts, and he was even hospitalized on occasion because of these episodes, and for also a burst appendix. Gacy later estimated that between the ages of 14 and 18, he had probably spent almost a year in the hospital, and attributed the decline of his grades to missing school during this time. While Gacy's medical condition was never conclusively diagnosed, his father suspected that he was lying about it. And on one occasion, he actually openly accused his son of faking these illnesses. I don't think that's true. I'm sure he was actually ill. But that just goes to further show how poor the relationship was between them. So, young adulthood, starting his career. In 1960, at the age of 18, Gacy became involved in politics, working as an assistant precinct captain for a local Democratic Party candidate. This led to even more criticism from his father because he just couldn't do anything right, and his father called him a patsy. He later speculated that his political involvement might have been an attempt to kind of antagonize his father because nothing was ever good enough. So he thought maybe subconsciously, because his father mocked his interest in politics, maybe it was a way to get acceptance. Maybe if he pushed hard enough and really leaned into it, he could actually be accepted. And he did say in Buried Dreams, the book, I was always looking for acceptance because my dad made me feel like I was never good enough. And that's going to be a recurring theme that's just going to keep coming up in this story.
Yeah, you think if he had a better father, then his crimes could have been avoided.
It's true. It's true.
I don't know.
It's possible. I don't want to say it's true. It's possible. It's
because, you have serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer, whose father was caring.
Yeah. A lovely family from all accounts.
Yeah, but then he ended up, I guess that's more of a nature argument.
Yeah.
And it's, some people are just born without the faculties necessary to know right from wrong or to have emotion to dictate their actions.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because you want to think that everybody is born with, all the tools they need to exist and find spiritual fulfillment. Or maybe they do, but just in a different way.
Yeah. Maybe it just gets misguided along the way.
Yeah.
Misconstrued. Especially if you're treated in these types of ways. I can see how, maybe what you thought was true isn't. Maybe you should try something different to be seen or to have that satisfaction.
Yeah. I think that we just all have different challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. So, another example, Gacy's father bought him a car, and he kept the vehicle's title in his own name until Gacy had paid for it, which took several years. His father would confiscate the keys if Gacy didn't do as he said, but in April 1962, Gacy actually purchased an extra set of keys, and in response, his father removed the distributor cap to keep him from having to drive the car. But as soon as it was put back on, John Wayne Gacy left the house and drove to a cousin in Las Vegas to get away. He had $136 to his name and just wanted to get away from the house. So he worked in Las Vegas as an ambulance service person before being transferred to Palm Mortuary. And he actually worked as a mortuary attendant for 3 months, observing morticians, embalming bodies, and occasionally serving as a pallbearer. And he also slept on a cot behind the embalming room and later confessed that one evening, when he was alone, he clambered into this coffin of a teenage boy, embracing him, caressing him before experiencing a sense of shock. And this is what made Gacy go back home. So Gacy goes back home from Las Vegas. He enrolls in Northwestern Business College despite having not completed high school. He graduated in 1963 and took a management trainee position with a shoe company. And the following year, the company transferred him to Illinois to work as a salesperson, and then he was promoted to a manager. And this is where he met his future wife, a coworker, Marilyn Myers. During their courtship, JC joined the local chapter of the JCs, which was like a fraternity political party type of thing.
Just JC joined the local chapter of the JCs?
Gacy joined the JCs.
Oh, that's kind of delightful.
Yeah, Gacy joined the JCs.
Lovely.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Gacy joined the JCs.
It was meant to be.
It was. Speaking of meant to be, that same year, he had his second homosexual experience.
What a fucking transition. Nice segue.
Thank you. So, according to Gacy, a college in the JCs started loading him up with drinks and invited him to spend the evening on his sofa. His colleague then performed fellatio on him while he was drunk. And then at this point, Gacy had risen to the position of vice president of the JCs and was named the third most outstanding JC in Illinois. Like I had mentioned before, he really knew how to climb the political and social ladder. And he was doing so from a very young age. And I think that also has to do with his yearning for acceptance. If he couldn't get it from his father, he's going to get it from wherever he can. And also just that feeling of being belonging.
Right. And
he didn't have that.
It's my understanding as well that he was a very charismatic person.
Yeah, incredibly charismatic person. So charming. Which
probably developed out of his upbringing as a coping mechanism.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They say the kids who are the happiest are really the saddest inside, which sounds really dramatic, but it is something that people actually social workers look out for. If somebody is specifically not necessarily happy, but if a child is being overly like appeasing and like very like submissive, that could be a sign of something being wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah. In September 1964, Gacy married his wife, Marilyn. And Marilyn's father actually owned some Kentucky Fried Chicken franchises.
Hell yeah.
In Waterloo, Iowa. So the couple actually moved there so Gacy could manage the restaurants with the understanding that they were going to move into Marilyn's parents' former home. So he's going to help with the family business, help his new father-in-law out. And it was a good offer. He was going to receive $15,000 per year, which is the equivalent of $152,600 this year.
Wow. Inflation has really done a number to this country.
Plus a share of the restaurant's profits.
Not bad.
Not bad.
As much chicken as he could eat.
Right. Genuinely. And his wife ended up giving birth to a son in February 1966 and a daughter in March 1967. And Gacy would later describe this period of his life as perfect. He felt like he finally earned his father's approval. He said that he did love his wife and children very, very much. He said that this felt like the American dream, like an idyllic family, and that he actually felt that, which was a little surprising, but I'm happy that he felt that at least a little. So much so earning...
So the end.
What?
The end. That's how it ends.
That's it. Oh, just one more thing. When Gacy's parents visited July 1966, his father privately apologized for the abuse he inflicted before happily saying, "Son, I was wrong about you," and shook Gacy's hand.
That must have been a hell of a moment for him.
The end.
Roll credits. Wow. What a happy story. Thank you, Madison.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So after getting this handshake, Gacy opened a club in his basement where his employers... Gacy opened a club in his basement where his employees could drink alcohol and play pool. And although Gacy employed teenagers of both sexes, he socialized only with the men. Gacy gave many of them alcohol before he made sexual advances, and if they rebuffed him, he would just say that they were jokes or he was just testing them out.
Oh, okay.
And that's where we get into the early incidents. This is the earliest incident of what might be one of his first survivors that we know of.
And what year was this?
1967.
1967.
1967. January of 1967.
Great time for music. Not a great time for young boys.
Not so much. Not so much. Especially not for Steve Nemmers. He was an 18-year-old student at Ellsworth Community College. He rode to school with some friends in that area, and one evening when he was picked up by this friend, his friend had actually worked at the local KFC, and his friend wanted to stop in and get his check before heading home. And that's where Steve first met John Wayne Gacy. Steve described him as very personable, but overall unmemorable, except for what would happen following. Gacy invited the young men over to his house since his wife and child were out of town so that they could play pool and drink. The kids obliged and they hung out at Gacy's house. They were playing pool. And at one point, Gacy asked Steve, "Hey, do you want to play some pool for $1 a game?" And they did. Steve was pretty good at that point in his life, he said, and Gacy seemed to be a little bit miffed that he was kicking his ass. And then Gacy starts to brag and talk about all his connections in Chicago, like being friends with the mayor and the police chief. And then Steve noticed a bunch of certificates around his basement hanging up. And one was from the Illinois Health and Wellness Department. And Gacy told Steve that he earned that from being on a board of a department that studied homosexuals.
Is that... What department?
The Illinois Health and Wellness Department.
Oh, I didn't know they had it in the budget to study that kind of thing.
You know, I don't know how real it was. We will get there later.
Oh, I see.
But that is apparently a ploy that he would commonly use to bring up the topic and broach the subject with men.
Oh, wow. Well, I was tricked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also, though, very possible because especially back in those days, it wasn't as widely accepted. It was seen as like a condition almost rather than as just a way somebody is. Mm-hmm. So it might have been studied. Like sexual deviancy is probably what it would have been classified under. But yeah, I don't know how accurate that is, if that was true at all. But I do know that he had a very private fascination with it, with different sexualities in general. If you watch the John Wayne Gacy tapes, The Conversations with the Killer, it's on Netflix. He he talks about like there's 3 different sexes. There's being straight, there's being gay, and then being bisexual. I think I actually get into this. Yeah. He would insist that he wasn't gay. He said that you can't take the clinical definition and define it to him because he wasn't in love with the men. He was just doing it to do it with anybody. He saw it as just like whatever. It's just a human. It's just not even a human. It's just like something there to like for whatever. To tickle.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Thank you. And there's no love involved. He said that was his defense. So the 2 teens that were with Steve wanted Gacy to come to a party that they were going to be throwing. So they're like, hey, Steve, why don't you stay the night at Gacy's? Show him where it is the following day. And Steve was uncomfortable with this idea, but he figured that it would be safer to stay at Gacy's, even though he was uncomfortable, than go home on a winter night with drunk drivers. Which, smart decision, I would say, in that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Hindsight's 20/20. He didn't know.
Right.
Yeah. I would also probably stay. So yeah, the 2 teens left, and Steve and Gacy, they kept playing pool. And then Gacy changed the conversation pretty much immediately, asking Steve to up the stakes of pool. He said, if I win, you have to perform a sex act on me, but if you win, I perform one on you. Ugh. Gacy would later say that he would bring this up to people as a way to initiate the conversation and put out feelers for that relationship.
Okay.
I just think that just, like, I get it, but also that's the way that you're starting out the conversation.
Yeah, it's a hell of a thing to use to transition.
It really, yeah, truly. Well, that's also why he would use those studies to also help him transition a little bit, because sometimes he would say that he would trick boys into doing things as part of a study.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So
it was a whole range of messy and messed up.
Man, this story's got up and down and up and down.
And we're just in the beginning.
Okay.
We're just beginning. So Steve was adamantly against it, refused. Gacy just started laughing. He changed the conversation, not a ton, because he changed the conversation to asking Steve if he's ever seen a stag film. Which, if you don't know, guys, is porn.
You ever see a stag film?
Ever see a stag film? So
that's a very old person thing to say.
It is. It really is. So Gacy got the projector out. He set up a screen, turned out the light, and started the film, and then just left Steve alone. Steve said it wasn't 5 minutes later when the lights came back on and he heard a click behind him. He turned and he could see the cylinders of the gun behind his head were filled with bullets, so it was a real loaded gun. Gacy ordered him to pull his pants down so he could give him oral sex, and Steve started to cry. He started begging John to not do this, pleading with him, and after a minute of pure terror, he said that Gacy just laughed, ordered Steve to pull his pants back up and go over to the bar.
Oh my God.
Gacy said that he just had a particular obsession with putting heavy psychological pressure on people, and he was just analyzing Steve the whole time, just seeing what he would do. And Steve said that his guard went down, and he thought that he was safe. He thought that he was just this weirdo guy, just asking weird questions. And I mean, with how charismatic he is, I'm sure it's also what you'd want to believe. I'm sure you'd probably convince yourself to some degree that,
right,
you know, I guess you are safe. Gacy said, okay, like, you want to go to bed? Let's just go to bed. I'll show you to the spare room. Like, we'll go to Iowa Falls the next morning, bright and early. So, for some strange reason, Steve was having a really hard time falling asleep. When the next thing he knew, he felt a hand on his thigh. And he saw, through the light in the window, Gacy's face, which he said still haunts him to this day. And Gacy had a knife pressed into, like, this hole of your throat here. And he was rubbing Steve's leg, and he told him that they were going to finish what they had started in the basement. Steve, again, started to bawl, begging him not to do it. And Gacy took the pressure off of the knife and started laughing again. Gacy said that he was frustrated that he wasn't able to break him in the basement, and he said that he wanted to try again. Gacy went away. Steve got dressed, sat up, and stayed awake until 9:30 a.m. when they were going to leave. He told Gacy that he was ready to go home, and they rode back the 1.5 hours to Iowa Falls.
That is I feel so tense. That's like one of the worst stories that I've heard in a long time.
Not good. Not good.
But he survived.
He did, and he's probably one of the earliest. I'm sure there were others considering the stories, but he's like one of the earliest survivors. Of it.
So at this time, Gacy is just like kind of testing the waters and seeing what he's capable of doing.
Exactly, testing what he's capable of doing, and I think also like what he wants out of it. As well. Like, is it the psychological thing? Because that's also a part of it that he does genuinely like it. That's not a lie. But yeah, so on the ride home, Gacy's like, hey, if you were to mention this to anybody, I could call somebody in Chicago and they'd be here the next day to kill you. So I don't think you're going to do that. Steve said that he didn't tell his parents or the police, just didn't come forward. And it happens.
Yeah.
And this was before any crimes were committed that we know of. Steve was very lucky, and he may be one of the very first survivors of Gacy that we know of.
Huh.
Okay, so in Waterloo now with his wife, Gacy joined the local Jaycees chapter.
Yeah.
Regularly offering extended hours to the organization in addition to the long 14-hour days he worked at the restaurants. He would have the people at the Jaycees call him the Colonel. He'd bring chicken to them. And he and the other Waterloo Jaycees were also deeply involved in drug abuse, pornography, prostitution, and wife swapping. Although Gacy was considered very ambitious and very braggadocious, the Jaycees held him in a very high regard for his fundraising and philanthropy work.
Yeah.
In 1967, he was named Outstanding Vice President of the Jaycees and served on the board of directors. And in August of that year, 1967, Gacy sexually assaulted 15-year-old Donald Voorhees Jr., the son of Donald Edwin Voorhees, who was a local politician and fellow Jaycee.
Huh.
Gacy lured Voorhees to his house with the promise of showing him a stag film, regularly played at these Jaycee events. Gacy piled Voorhees with alcohol, allowed him to watch this stag film, and then persuaded him to engage in fellatio, saying that you have to have sex with a man before you can start having sex with women. Over the following months, Gacy abused several other young men, including one whom he encouraged to have sex with his own wife before blackmailing him into having fellatio with him. Gacy also tricked several teenagers into believing he was commissioned to conduct homosexual experiments for scientific research and would pay them $50 apiece if they would perform research on him, so to speak.
Jesus.
In March 1968, the following year, Voorhees told his father about the abuse, and the police were immediately informed. Gacy was arrested and charged with performing oral sodomy on Voorhees and the attempted assault of 16-year-old Edward Lynch. Gacy very much denied all of the charges. He demanded to take a polygraph test, and the results were indicative of deception. Not that can be used in court, but not a great look.
Mm-hmm.
Gacy publicly denied any wrongdoing and insisted that the charges were politically motivated because his father, Voorhees Sr., had opposed Gacy's nomination for appointment as the president. So he's like, you're just trying to get back at me. And several fellow Jaycees believed John Wayne Gacy. They rallied in his support. But the judge felt differently and he was indicted. On August 30th, Gacy got one of his employees, an 18-year-old, to physically assault the boy that he had assaulted in an effort to discourage him from testifying. The young boy was lured to an isolated park, sprayed with mace in his eyes, and then beaten up. But Voorhees was able to escape and reported the actions. Gacy was then charged with hiring his employee to assault and intimidate Voorhees. So on top of the sodomy, he's got this intimidation and assault charge on his record now too. So now, September 12th, Gacy was supposed to undergo a psychiatric evaluation at the University of Iowa, and the two doctors concluded that he had antisocial personality disorder, the clinical term for sociopathy and or psychopathy, was unlikely to benefit from treatment, and that his pattern behavior was likely to bring him into repeated conflict with society. This is from a section of the report that detailed his psych evaluation, and it's quoted, "The most striking aspect of the test results is the patient's total denial of responsibility for everything that has happened to him. He can produce an alibi for everything. He presents himself as a victim of circumstances and blames other people who are out to get him. The patient attempts to assure a sympathetic response by depicting himself as being at the mercy of a hostile environment." And the doctors ultimately concluded that he was competent to stand trial. Gacy did end up pleading guilty to one count of sodomy, but not guilty to the charges related to the other children. He claimed that Voorhees offered himself willingly and he acted out of curiosity, but the judge did not believe him. Gacy was convicted of sodomy on December 3rd and sentenced to 10 years imprisonment. To be served at the Anamosa State Penitentiary. That same day, Gacy's wife petitioned for divorce, requesting that she be awarded the couple's home and property and sole custody of the 2 children in alimony. The court ruled in her favor, the divorce was finalized, and Gacy never saw his wife or children ever again.
Damn. I wonder where they are now.
Right? I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
I hope just doing well.
I hope so. I mean, how do kids grow up knowing that their father was one of the most notorious serial killers to ever live?
I don't know. Well, that's kind of like Israel Keys. Do you know him?
I know the story, but I don't know.
Israel Keys is probably one of the most prolific serial killers we've ever had, and we don't even have an idea of how many people he's killed because of just how normal he was.
And this was comparatively recently.
Exactly. And the condition for him confessing and like telling the police where some of the bodies were was that his daughter never find out, that the media was not involved, that it was as lessened as possible. And that actually kind of worked because people don't really know about Israel Keys. And you see, I don't even fucking know his name because they didn't publicize it as much. They didn't sensationalize it as much to help protect his daughter from knowing who he is and what he did.
Well, as much as she's protected, I doubt that.
Oh yeah.
She'll have the peace that he's helping.
Absolutely not. That. Yeah. You maybe should have thought about that before you did all those awful things.
Probably. Yeah.
That's just my take. What do I know?
I think that's a pretty accepted take.
So during his incarceration, being the charismatic person that he is, Gacy rapidly acquired a reputation as a model prisoner. He was admired and lauded by his fellow inmates. He was a natural leader. Within months of his arrival, he had risen to the position of head cook. And being the head cook also meant that no one messed with him. You mess with Gacy, you make him upset, you are not eating, or you're eating shit. It was an incredibly powerful position, and despite his experience in the food service being a large part of this position, he also knew what he was doing. It was a very calculated move to protect himself.
Yeah, do you think he kept the 11 secret herbs and spices? And he brought that into his
you know what? Term? I think he would have actually. Yeah. I almost said he seemed like a nice guy. Like he probably would have brought it in with him.
Probably, yeah. They probably called him the colonel in jail.
Yeah, they probably did. Genuinely.
Which is so strange because typically with arrests of people who molest children, they're treated very poorly in jail.
Yeah.
But he just had the
charisma
and strategic thinking to
get above all that.
Yeah.
So, I've never heard of these fucking JCs before this, and they're fucking everywhere because apparently the prison had a chapter.
Oh.
And he joined that, and he increased its membership from 50 to 650.
Oh my God. What does JC stand for?
It's JAYCEE. So it's not just JC.
Oh, I see. What is...
I have no idea.
Okay, gotcha.
I think it's just like a fraternity type of thing.
I see.
Like a moose club. You've heard of those, right?
Yeah.
Like a moose club.
Yeah, with a little fez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of what it is. So Gacy secured an increase in the inmates' daily pay within the prison mess hall. And he was actually supervisor of several projects to improve conditions for inmates, including the installation of a miniature golf course. He was presented with a Distinguished Service Award for his efforts for his JC chapter.
Yay! Mini golf course in a jail.
Yeah. See, he probably brought those herbs and spices with him.
Yeah. You think he was like Building the little windmill himself.
Yeah. On June 1969, Gacy was denied parole. To prepare for a second scheduled parole hearing, he completed 16 high school courses and obtained his diploma. But on Christmas Day of that same year, Gacy's father died from cirrhosis.
Yay!
When informed of his father's death, Gacy collapsed to the floor, sobbing, and his request for supervised compassionate leave to attend the funeral was denied. So he was never able to make amends with his father or give the final goodbye. And one of his friends within the penitentiary said that Gacy was pretty jovial and warm, but not after his father's death. This inmate friend recalled that he didn't really see Gacy smile again, and that it seemed like there was a huge part of him that was lost that day.
Huh.
Hey guys, remember how I said it was 2 parts? Well, guess what? It's 3.
It's 3.
3.
Barrel, 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 barrel. Hey, folks.
3 parts.
Goodness gracious. Thank you so much for bringing this story. It's so interesting. I didn't know like half of that about Gacy. Yeah.
See, that's why I like the details.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot, but it's the guy that Steve's story. He told it in the John Wayne Gacy tapes, and that one really stuck out to me.
Yeah, the guy who stayed overnight.
Mm-hmm.
That's like one of the most like really set your jaw on edge.
Yeah.
To think of that happening. What a nightmare.
Yeah. It reminded me of the his behavior, the way it's described, it reminds me of Suzanne Sudeikis. Remember how her dad would come in with the gun? How he came with the gun, he just started laughing, walking away. Remember that?
Vaguely, yeah.
It reminds me of that. Like how just like, I don't know. I think also the reason why it fascinates me and why I want every single detail is to try to find some logic behind it, even though I know that that's not possible. Like I can't fathom doing any of these things to anybody.
Yeah.
So like I think my brain just wants to try to find some type of reason for it.
I mean, all the components are there. You have the paternal trauma combined with sexual trauma and a very poor upbringing and skewed expectations, and you get somebody like John Wayne Gacy.
Bada bing, bada boom.
That was so bada bing, bada boom. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, you can catch us next time with John Wayne Gacy Part 2 next week. If you are interested in finding us, you can follow us on my existential. Nope. You can follow us at my. Nope. You can follow.
You can follow us at. Nope.
Nope. You can follow us at ME Crisis Pod on Instagram and Facebook. If you're interested in looking at Dylan and his wonderful artwork, you can find him at.
Find me in Marble Folk.
Also, can I say if you're interested in a commission being done?
Oh. And you're not looking to scam me?
Yeah, if you're looking for a commission to be done and not to scam Dylan, we'll get into that story next time.
Yeah.
Then Dylan would be happy to do it.
I would, absolutely. I'd love to draw you.
He's an incredible artist.
You can find me at MarbleFolk.
And me at me.
Madison Epley.
Madison Epley. You can also email us at myexistentialcrisispodcast@gmail.com. And that is it.
Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you so much, guys. Bye.
Bye.